I am Raisa, 33 years old, working as a senior financial analyst in downtown Chicago. For 6 years, I saved every single dollar for my dream home, making sacrifices that would break most people. Last month, our annual family gathering should have been filled with laughter and love. Instead, it became the moment my own sister Allison and her husband Brian destroyed everything I had built. When I discovered what they had done, Brian looked me straight in the eye and said those words that will haunt me forever. But before I tell you how I got my revenge, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family members betray your trust. Because what happened next will shock you to your core. My life in Chicago had been methodical and purposeful for nearly a decade. Working at Sterling Financial Group, I had earned respect for my analytical precision and ability to protect massive investment portfolios. The bitter irony that I could safeguard millions for wealthy clients while failing to protect my own hard-earned savings still burns inside me today. My studio apartment in Lincoln Park was tiny but efficient. Nothing extravagant, just 400 square feet that I called home. I drove a 12-year-old Toyota Camry that I had paid off years ago. While my colleagues grabbed expensive lunches from trendy downtown spots, I packed homemade sandwiches every single day. Every small sacrifice was calculated, every expense weighed against my ultimate goal. You see, I had been dreaming of a specific house since I first saw it during a neighborhood walk 3 years ago. A charming Victorian townhouse just 8 blocks from Lake Michigan, with original hardwood floors and a small garden where I could grow herbs and vegetables. It wasn't a mansion, just a modest 2-bedroom with character and history where I could finally put down roots. For 6 relentless years, I deposited 40% of every paycheck into my savings account. I skipped vacations while friends posted photos from tropical beaches. I bought clothes exclusively from discount stores and outlet malls. I said no to concerts, expensive dinners, and weekend getaways that my social circle took for granted. My friends sometimes joked that I was boring, but I had my sights set on something far more valuable than temporary entertainment. I wanted stability, security, and a place that belonged entirely to me. In a world where everything felt uncertain, home ownership represented the one thing nobody could take away from me. Or so I believed. My younger sister, Allison, had always lived life from a completely different playbook. Growing up, she was the charming one, the social butterfly who could talk her way out of any trouble. Where I was methodical and careful, she was spontaneous and reckless. Our parents adored her free-spirited nature, often commenting that she brought joy and excitement to every family gathering. I was the responsible daughter, the one who studied hard, worked part-time jobs during college, and graduated debt-free through careful planning and sacrifice. Allison was the fun daughter, the one who changed majors 3 times, accumulated student loans she never worried about repaying, and somehow always landed on her feet despite making questionable decisions. The pattern of financial manipulation started gradually, almost imperceptibly. First, Brian borrowed $300 to repair his motorcycle, promising to repay me within 2 weeks. 2 weeks became 2 months, which eventually became never. When I gently reminded him about the debt, he acted confused and claimed he had already paid me back. Then it was $700 for what he described as a can't-miss investment opportunity that would triple our money within 60 days. When I asked for details about this investment, he became defensive and accused me of not trusting family. 60 days passed with no returns and no explanations. Next came $1,500 when their rent was allegedly late due to a payroll error at Brian's job. I paid their landlord directly to ensure the money went where it was supposed to go. 3 days later, Allison posted Instagram photos of herself and Brian at an expensive steakhouse, celebrating some unnamed good news with champagne and lobster. Each time I tried to establish boundaries or ask questions about their finances, I was labeled selfish and unsupportive. My parents consistently sided with Allison, reminding me that family members help each other during difficult times. They pointed out that I had a stable career and no dependents, making it easier for me to assist those who were struggling. But I persisted with my savings plan despite their constant financial emergencies. By last month, I had finally reached my target, $92,000 in my dedicated house fund. My real estate agent, Jennifer, had been monitoring the market and assured me that we could move quickly when the right property became available. The Victorian townhouse I had been admiring was finally going on the market. The elderly owner had decided to move to a retirement community, and Jennifer had arranged for me to have the first opportunity to make an offer. Everything was falling perfectly into place. The inspection was scheduled, the mortgage pre-approval was complete, and my down payment was sitting safely in my savings account. Or so I thought. The family reunion at my Uncle Robert's lake house in Wisconsin had been planned for months. It was an annual tradition that brought together 3 generations of our extended family for a long weekend of barbecues, boat rides, and catching up on everyone's lives. Despite my excitement about the house purchase, I decided to attend because family connections were important to me. That decision would cost me everything I had worked toward for 6 years. But it would also teach me the most valuable lesson of my life about standing up for myself against people who mistake kindness for weakness. The 3-hour drive to Uncle Robert's lake house in Wisconsin felt peaceful and relaxing. As I pulled up the winding gravel road, I could see the large rustic cabin nestled among towering pine trees, overlooking the crystal-clear lake that had been our family gathering spot for over 20 years. Cars were already scattered across the property, indicating that most of the extended family had arrived before me. Cousin Mark was the first to greet me, his booming laugh carrying across the yard as I stepped out of my Toyota. Aunt Susan rushed over with her signature warm hug, immediately asking about my job and whether I was dating anyone special. My cousins Lisa and David waved from where they were setting up volleyball nets near the water. For a brief moment, I felt my shoulders relax completely. This was family. This was where I belonged. Then I spotted Brian walking toward me with an unusually bright smile plastered across his face. That should have been my first warning sign. Typically, Brian offered nothing more than a polite nod before finding reasons to avoid conversation with me. But today, he approached with open arms, as if we were the closest of friends. "Raisa, so great to see you," he said enthusiastically, reaching for my overnight bag. "You look fantastic. That promotion must really be paying off well." I felt immediately uncomfortable. I had not received any recent promotion, and I certainly had not shared details about my financial situation with Brian. I thanked him cautiously while scanning the area for Allison. She stood on the wooden porch, watching our interaction with an expression I could not quite read. When our eyes met, she quickly turned away and became very busy organizing items in a nearby cooler. As we walked toward the cabin together, I noticed Brian was wearing an expensive-looking watch that I had never seen before. The silver and gold design looked like a genuine Rolex, easily worth $8,000 or more. He also pulled out the newest model iPhone, not the basic version, but the premium model with maximum storage capacity. "Nice watch," I commented, trying to sound casual. Brian glanced down and grinned. "Thanks. Business has been really picking up lately, finally seeing some returns on my investments." "What kind of investments?" I asked, genuinely curious since Brian had never demonstrated any real business acumen during the years I had known him. "Oh, cryptocurrency and tech stocks. Very complicated stuff. Most people would not understand the technical aspects. Inside the cabin, my parents greeted me with their usual warmth. Mom was busy preparing her legendary three-bean salad while Dad organized fishing equipment for the next morning. As we caught up on recent events, I could not help but notice Allison hovering nearby, her behavior unusually nervous and fidgety. She was wearing a diamond tennis bracelet that sparkled every time she moved her hand. Just 6 weeks ago, she called me crying because they supposedly couldn't afford their grocery bill. During dinner that evening, our large extended family gathered around multiple picnic tables set up on the deck overlooking the lake. I found myself sitting next to my favorite cousin, Emma, who works as a pediatric nurse in Milwaukee. As we talked and laughed, I felt excited enough to share my big news about finally being ready to purchase my dream house. It has everything I ever wanted: 2 bedrooms, original hardwood floors throughout, and a small garden where I can grow my own vegetables. I can already picture myself having morning coffee on the front porch while reading the newspaper. I noticed that Brian had stopped his conversation and was listening intently to every word I was saying. He moved his chair closer to our end of the table, inserting himself into our discussion. "That sounds absolutely amazing, Raisa. Congratulations on reaching such an important milestone. What is your timeline looking like? When are you planning to make the offer?" I explained that I intended to submit my offer as soon as I returned to Chicago on Monday morning. If everything went smoothly, I could potentially close within 30 to 45 days. "And you've got all the down payment money ready to go, sitting in your account right now?" Brian asked, his questions becoming strangely specific and detailed. At the time, his curiosity seemed normal. People often ask about real estate transactions, and I was genuinely excited to discuss my carefully laid out plans. I confirmed that yes, I had been saving methodically for 6 years and had accumulated everything needed for the down payment plus closing costs. After dinner, as everyone helped clear dishes and clean up the kitchen, Brian approached me again. His smartphone was in his hand, and he looked frustrated and slightly panicked. "My phone battery just died completely, and I need to check something really urgent for work," he said, holding up his device. "Would you mind if I borrowed your phone for just a couple of minutes? I promise it will be super quick." Without thinking twice about it, I unlocked my iPhone and handed it to him. My aunt called for help carrying heavy items to the kitchen, and I spent the next 20 minutes washing dishes, storing leftovers, and organizing the dining area. When I returned to the living room, Brian casually handed my phone back to me, thanking me for the favor and saying he had been able to handle his work emergency. Later that night, as I was preparing for bed in the small guest room I was sharing with Emma, I decided to check my emails before sleeping. I noticed that my banking app had been opened recently, which seemed odd since I had not checked my accounts at all that day. I dismissed it as either a technical glitch or perhaps I had absentmindedly opened it earlier without remembering. The rest of the weekend was filled with traditional family activities that I had always treasured. Saturday morning brought fishing expeditions off the wooden dock with Dad and my uncles. The afternoon included a long hike through the surrounding forest with my cousins, followed by an enormous barbecue featuring Uncle Robert's famous ribs and corn on the cob. Saturday night, we gathered around the fire pit, sharing stories and roasting marshmallows under a sky full of stars. For those precious days, it felt like the golden times of our childhood. Allison even seemed to relax as the weekend progressed. On Sunday morning, she joined me for an early walk along the shoreline, and we talked like we used to years ago, before Brian had changed the dynamics of our relationship. By Sunday afternoon, as everyone began packing their belongings to head home, there were emotional goodbyes and heartfelt promises to gather together more frequently. My parents hugged me tightly, expressing how much they looked forward to seeing photographs of my new house once I completed the purchase. Allison gave me an unusually long and tight embrace, holding on as if she was reluctant to let me go. "Drive safely back to Chicago," she whispered, and for a moment I thought I detected tears forming in her eyes. It is only a 3-hour drive, Allison. I will be perfectly fine. I laughed, not understanding the emotional weight behind her words. Brian also gave me an unexpected hug and said, "Thank you for everything this weekend, Raisa. You really are an incredible sister. We appreciate you more than you could possibly know." As I drove back to Chicago that Sunday evening, I felt genuinely optimistic about my family relationships for the first time in years. Despite our differences and the financial tensions of recent months, family bonds had proven stronger than temporary conflicts. Maybe Brian was finally maturing into a responsible adult. Maybe my relationship with Allison could return to its former closeness. Maybe we could all support each other through life's challenges the way families are supposed to. I had absolutely no idea that at that exact moment, everything I had worked toward for 6 years was already gone forever. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made Chicago feel alive and full of possibility. I woke up earlier than usual, energized by anticipation and ready to take the next step toward homeownership. After brewing a strong cup of coffee, I sat at my small kitchen table and opened my laptop to review the property details one final time before calling Jennifer, my real estate agent. The Victorian townhouse looked even more perfect in the morning light streaming through my apartment window. 2 bedrooms with original crown molding, hardwood floors that had been recently refinished, and that small backyard garden where I could already picture myself planting tomatoes and herbs next spring. This was going to be my sanctuary, my investment in stability and independence. At exactly 8:30, I dialed Jennifer's number. She answered on the first ring, her voice bright and professional as always. "Raisa, perfect timing. I was just reviewing the seller's timeline. They want to move quickly, so if you can get your financials in order today, we can submit your offer by this afternoon." "Absolutely," I replied confidently. "I just need to transfer the down payment from my savings account to checking, so everything is ready for the earnest money deposit." "Wonderful. The market is competitive right now, but your offer is strong. I think we have an excellent chance." After ending the call, I felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervous energy. This was really happening. 6 years of sacrifice and discipline were about to pay off in the most tangible way possible. I opened my banking app on my phone, entered my password, and waited for my account balances to load. When the numbers appeared on the screen, I stared in complete confusion. I closed the app and reopened it, certain there had been some kind of technical error. My savings account balance showed $3,428. That could not possibly be correct. Just 4 days ago, that account had contained $92,000. My hands began trembling as I navigated to the transaction history. Cold sweat broke out across my forehead as I scrolled through recent activity. There they were, 3 separate wire transfers, all processed over the weekend, while I had been enjoying family time at the lake house. Friday night at 11:47 p.m., $30,000 transferred to an account I had never seen before. Saturday afternoon at 2:15 p.m., $31,000 to a different unknown account. Sunday morning at 7:32 a.m., $31,000 to yet another unfamiliar account. The room began spinning around me. I felt physically nauseated, rushing to the bathroom where I vomited up the coffee I had just consumed. This had to be some kind of mistake, some kind of banking error or fraudulent activity. There was no way my entire life savings could simply vanish over a weekend. With shaking hands, I called my bank's customer service line. After navigating through automated prompts and providing multiple forms of identification, I was finally connected to a fraud specialist. The hold music felt like torture, as my entire future hung in the balance. "Miss Martinez, I have reviewed the transactions you are concerned about. These appear to be authorized wire transfers initiated from your registered mobile device using your correct login credentials." "But I did not make those transfers," I insisted, my voice rising with panic. I was at a family reunion all weekend. Someone must have accessed my account fraudulently. I understand your concern. Can you think of any time when someone else might have had access to your unlocked phone? The memory hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Brian borrowing my phone. The banking app being recently opened when I checked my emails later that night. His expensive new watch and premium smartphone. Allison's diamond bracelet and nervous behavior throughout the weekend. I ended the call with instructions to file a formal fraud report, but I already knew exactly what had happened. My own sister and husband had systematically stolen everything I had worked toward for 6 years. They had used my trust, my family loyalty, and my unlocked phone to destroy my dreams and secure their own financial windfall. I tried calling Allison immediately, straight to voicemail. I tried again, same result. I sent multiple text messages that showed as delivered but remained unread for hours. I called Brian's number, no answer. In desperation, I called my parents. "Raisa, honey, what a wonderful surprise!" My mother answered cheerfully. "Did you have a safe drive home yesterday? We had such a lovely time seeing everyone." "Mom, I need to ask you something important," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Have you heard from Allison and Brian today?" "Oh, yes, they stopped by this morning to show us their new car. Such a beautiful SUV, all black, with those fancy chrome wheels. Brian says one of his investments finally paid off big. They seemed so excited about taking a vacation to celebrate their good fortune." Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. New SUV, investment paying off, vacation celebration. They were spending my money while I sat in my apartment trying to comprehend the magnitude of their betrayal. "Mom, I have to go. I will call you back later," I managed to say before hanging up. I collapsed onto my couch as the full reality crashed down around me. My own sister, the person who had shared a bedroom with me growing up, who knew all my dreams and fears, had conspired with her husband to steal my entire future. Everything I had sacrificed for, every small pleasure I had denied myself, every careful financial decision I had made had been erased in a single weekend of family bonding. I called my best friend Maya, barely able to form coherent sentences through my tears, as I explained what happened. "Raisa, you need to call the police right now," she said firmly. "This is theft on a massive scale. This is a serious crime. Family or not, they stole almost $100,000 from you." "But they are family," I whispered, still struggling to accept the reality of the situation. "That makes it worse, not better," Maya insisted. "If you do not report this immediately, you will never see that money again, and they will know they can take advantage of you whenever they want something." For several long minutes, I sat in stunned silence. Part of me wanted to believe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding that could be resolved through conversation and forgiveness. But the evidence was overwhelming, and their behavior over the weekend suddenly made perfect sense. "I'm going to drive to their house," I told Maya. "I need to confront them face to face before I involve the police." "Do you want me to come with you for support?" she offered immediately. "No, this is something I need to handle myself, but please stay available. I will call you afterward." As I grabbed my car keys and headed toward my front door, I had no idea that the confrontation awaiting me would permanently alter my understanding of family loyalty and personal boundaries. All I knew was that I deserved answers, and I was finally ready to demand them regardless of the consequences. The 2-hour drive to Allison and Brian's suburban home felt like the longest journey of my life. My emotions alternated between heartbreak, rage, and disbelief as I rehearsed what I would say to them. The radio played meaningless background noise that I could not focus on. Twice I had to pull over because tears made it impossible to see the road clearly. By the time I reached their neighborhood, my hands had stopped shaking. A cold, determined resolve had replaced the initial shock and grief. Their house sat in a modest development of ranch-style homes, nothing particularly impressive from the outside, which had always made their constant financial struggles seem legitimate and believable. As I pulled into their driveway, the evidence of their theft was impossible to ignore. A brand new black Escalade with temporary dealer plates sat prominently displayed, as if they were proud of their acquisition. Through the large front window, I could see movement inside the house and multiple shopping bags scattered across their living room floor. I walked to the front door and rang the doorbell, trying to control my breathing and maintain my composure. Brian answered almost immediately, and I watched surprise flicker across his face before he arranged his features into a casual, friendly expression. "Raisa, what brings you here? This is quite unexpected," he said, making no move to invite me inside. "We need to talk, Brian. Right now," I replied, my voice steadier than I had expected it to be. He hesitated for a moment, then shrugged and stepped aside to let me enter. As I walked into their living room, I saw Allison freeze in the middle of unpacking something from a designer shopping bag. Her eyes widened with what could only be described as pure guilt. "What is this about?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. "I think you both know exactly what this is about," I said, pulling out my phone and opening my banking app. $92,000, gone, transferred out in 3 separate transactions over the weekend when the only people who had access to my phone were sitting in this room. Brian crossed his arms defensively, his entire demeanor shifting from friendly surprise to cold calculation. "What are you talking about? That sounds like a personal banking problem." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my anger finally breaking through. "You borrowed my phone at the lake house. You transferred my money to your accounts. You stole my house down payment, my entire future." Allison looked desperately at Brian, who gave an almost imperceptible nod before his mask dropped completely. The friendly facade disappeared, replaced by a smugness that made my skin crawl. "Prove it," he challenged with a sneer. I held up my phone, showing them the transaction history. 3 transfers, all made when my phone was in your possession, the exact same weekend you suddenly have money for a new SUV and expensive shopping sprees. Allison at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, her eyes darting nervously between Brian and me. She started to speak, but Brian cut her off sharply. "So what if we did?" he said, his voice taking on a mocking tone that made me feel physically sick. "We needed it more than you do. You're single, with no responsibilities. We have a life to build, expenses to cover. Besides, you can always save up again. You're good at that." The casual cruelty of his words hit me like a physical blow. I turned to Allison, desperate for some sign that she was not completely on board with his betrayal. "Allison, how could you do this to me? That money represented 6 years of my life, 6 years of sacrifice from my home." She fidgeted with a shopping bag in her hands, avoiding eye contact. "You always had everything easier than me, Raisa. Good grades came naturally to you, career success, money management, everything just works out for you. I have struggled my entire life. You don't understand what that feels like." "So you steal from me?" I asked, incredulous. "Your own sister?" "It's not stealing when it's family," Brian interjected coldly. "It's redistribution. Besides, if you were really as smart as everyone thinks, you would have better security on your accounts." He gestured around the living room at the shopping bags and new purchases. "Look at all this stuff we needed. New clothes for Allison, tools for my projects, vacation plans we could never afford before. Allison deserves nice things for once in her life." Each justification made me more furious. The entitlement, the complete lack of remorse, the twisted rationalization of their theft as somehow justified. "I'm calling the police," I said, reaching for my phone again. Brian's expression darkened. "You do that, and we'll make sure the entire family knows how selfish you really are. Your own sister needed help, and you chose a house over family loyalty. What do you think your parents will say? The whole extended family. Who do you think they'll believe?" I looked at Allison one more time, hoping for some flicker of shame or regret. For a moment, I thought I saw it in her eyes, but then she moved closer to Brian, physically taking his side in this confrontation. You always act superior to everyone, Raisa. Always so perfect with your plans and your goals. Maybe this is the universe balancing things out. Besides, it's just money. You can earn more. Family relationships are forever. Just money? I repeated, my voice breaking. It was my future, my security, everything I worked for. Brian laughed, the sound cutting through me like broken glass. Well, now it's our future, our security. Go back to your little apartment and start over. Maybe you'll save faster this time. Something inside me snapped at those words. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the door. Their laughter followed me outside, echoing in my ears as I reached my car. I managed to drive around the corner before the tears came, violent and blinding. I pulled over at a gas station and called Maya back, barely able to speak through my rage and heartbreak. She listened quietly as I described the confrontation, the casual cruelty of their responses, and their complete lack of remorse. "Raisa, you cannot let them get away with this," she said firmly. "This is not just about the money anymore. This is about standing up for yourself and showing them there are consequences for betraying family trust." The next few days passed in a blur of grief and determination. I called in sick to work, unable to face colleagues while my world crumbled around me. My small apartment felt like a prison of broken dreams. Every corner reminded me of what I had lost and how it had been stolen from me. On Wednesday, my parents called repeatedly, leaving increasingly concerned voicemails. I finally answered on their fifth attempt. "Raisa, what is going on?" my father asked immediately. "Allison says you have been making wild accusations against her and Brian. Something about stolen money. She is very upset." They had already started spinning their version of events. I was not surprised, but hearing it still stung deeply. "Dad, they took my savings, $92,000 that I was going to use for a house down payment. Brian used my phone at the reunion to transfer it all out." "Honey, there must be some misunderstanding," my mother chimed in. "Brian told us his business investment finally paid off. That is where their money came from." "What business, Mom?" I asked, frustration rising. "When has Brian ever had a successful venture? When has he ever had money to invest in the first place?" There was uncomfortable silence before my father spoke again, his tone attempting to be diplomatic. "Look, Raisa, even if what you are saying is true, and I am not saying it is, but even if it were, is it not better to just let this go for family peace? Allison is your sister. Blood is thicker than water." I could not believe what I was hearing. Even faced with obvious truth, they were still making excuses, still choosing the path of least resistance, still expecting me to be the reasonable one who sacrificed for harmony. "So I should just accept that they stole my life savings?" I asked incredulously. "We could help you with a new down payment," my mother offered hesitantly. "Not the whole amount, of course, but maybe $5,000 to get you started again. Family has to stick together." The implication was clear. They believed me on some level, but were still choosing to enable Allison and Brian rather than support justice. "I need to go," I said abruptly. "I will call you later." That evening, Maya arrived at my apartment with takeout food and a business card. "You need to talk to someone," she said, handing me the card. "Marcus Thompson. He's a lawyer who specializes in financial fraud cases. He owes me a favor and will give you a free consultation." The next day, I met with Marcus in his downtown office. He was a sharp man in his 40s with kind eyes that balanced his otherwise intimidating presence. I told him everything, from the family dynamics to the specific details of the theft. "He has a strong case," he said after reviewing my documentation. "The transfers were unauthorized, made from your device while it was in their possession. The timing aligns perfectly with their sudden purchases. This constitutes wire fraud and theft, both serious crimes." "But I would have to testify against my own sister," I asked, my stomach twisting.
He leaned forward, his expression softening. Miss Martinez, family fraud is more common than you think. It is also one of the most underreported crimes because of exactly the conflict you are feeling. But ask yourself this. If a stranger had stolen $92,000 from you, would you hesitate to report it? Of course not, I admitted. Your sister and brother-in-law are counting on your family loyalty to protect them from consequences. They betrayed that loyalty, not you. That night, I made my decision. I was going to fight back. No more being the understanding sister who absorbed everyone else's bad behavior. No more choosing peace over justice. This time, there would be consequences.
Over the next week, I threw myself into gathering evidence with the precision I used in my financial analysis work. Marcus had given me a detailed list of documentation needed to build an airtight case against Allison and Brian. First, I obtained my phone records from the cellular company, showing exact timestamps of when my device was active and what apps were accessed. The banking app had been opened 3 separate times during the weekend, correlating perfectly with when Brian had borrowed my phone. Next, I discovered that Uncle Robert had installed security cameras around his lake house property after a break-in at a neighboring cabin the previous year. The footage clearly showed Brian sitting alone on the porch, hunched over a phone during the exact time frame when the first transfer occurred on Friday night. I also found social media posts where Brian had made cryptic references to a financial windfall coming his way. One post from 2 weeks before the reunion read, "Sometimes patience pays off in ways you never expected. Big changes coming soon." Another from the day after we returned said, "When the universe provides, you don't question it." The timeline of their purchases was equally damning. Credit card statements showed they had bought the Escalade on Monday morning, just hours after the final transfer. Store receipts from expensive boutiques were all dated within days of the theft. Their Disney World reservation had been made on Sunday evening while I was still driving home, unaware of what had happened. Marcus helped me document every instance where I had loaned him money in the past that had never been repaid. The pattern showed escalating amounts and increasingly elaborate excuses. What started as small emergency loans had grown into systematic financial exploitation. The most difficult evidence to compile was documenting Allison's level of involvement. Security footage showed her watching nervously while Brian used my phone. Text messages between them revealed discussions about solving their money problems in the weeks leading up to the reunion. She was clearly complicit, but determining whether she was a willing participant or under Brian's influence remained complicated. 2 weeks after discovering the theft, I was ready to take action. Marcus had prepared all the legal documents, the bank fraud department had completed their investigation, and the police report had been filed. Everything was in place for what Marcus called the controlled confrontation. The plan was strategic and calculated. Rather than simply having them arrested, Marcus suggested giving them one final opportunity to return the money voluntarily. This would demonstrate to the court that I had attempted reasonable resolution before pursuing criminal charges. More importantly, we would record this confrontation with their knowledge, creating an official record of their response to the accusations. If they continued to deny responsibility or showed no remorse, it would strengthen our case significantly. I called Allison on a Saturday morning, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "I need to speak with you and Brian today about a family matter. It's important." Her voice immediately became defensive. "What kind of family matter? If this is about your money accusations again, we already told you that was from Brian's investment." "Just give me 30 minutes of your time, both of you. I have some things I need to show you." There was a long pause before she agreed. "Fine, come over around 2 o'clock. But Raisa, this needs to stop. You're tearing the family apart with these crazy theories." I arrived at their house with Marcus and a court-appointed mediator, along with all our evidence organized in a professional briefcase. When Brian opened the door and saw the official delegation, his confident expression immediately shifted to concern. "What is this about?" he demanded, looking specifically at Marcus and the mediator. "Mr. Taylor, I'm Marcus Thompson, Miss Martinez's attorney. We're here to discuss the unauthorized transfer of $92,000 from your account to yours. We'd like to give you an opportunity to resolve this matter without criminal prosecution." Brian's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, calculation, and finally settling on defensive anger. "This is harassment. We already explained that money came from my business investment." Marcus opened his briefcase and began laying out evidence on their coffee table: phone records, security footage screenshots, bank transaction timelines, and social media posts. The documentation was overwhelming and undeniable. "Mr. Taylor, we have irrefutable proof that these transfers were made from Miss Martinez's phone while it was in your possession. We also have evidence of your immediate spending pattern that coincides exactly with the stolen funds." Allison had gone completely pale, staring at the evidence spread across her coffee table. She started to speak several times but couldn't find words. "You have two options," Marcus continued professionally. "You can return the money immediately, and we can discuss this as a family matter. Or we proceed with criminal charges for wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. These are federal crimes with potential prison sentences." The silence in the room was deafening. Brian stared at the evidence, his jaw working as he tried to formulate a response. Allison had tears streaming down her face, but she still hadn't spoken. Finally, Brian looked up with an expression of pure contempt. "You're really going to destroy your own family over money? You're going to send your sister's husband to prison because we took some of your precious savings?" I felt my composure crack slightly. "You destroy our family when you stole from me. You betrayed every bond of trust and love between us." "Trust?" Brian laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about trust? Your whole family talks about how selfish you are, how you hoard money while everyone else struggles. We just balanced the scales a little bit." Allison finally found her voice, though it was barely a whisper. "Brian, stop. Just stop." She turned to me, her eyes red and swollen. "Raisa, I am so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. Brian said it would just be a loan, that we'd pay it back once his business picked up. Then he said you'd never even notice because you have so much saved. Then he said it was too late to return it because we'd already spent some of it." Brian's face darkened as he realized Allison was breaking ranks. "Shut up, Allison. Don't say another word without a lawyer present." But the floodgates had opened. Allison continued through her tears. "He planned everything. He researched your banking app, set up the transfer accounts ahead of time, waited for the perfect opportunity at the reunion. I begged him not to do it, but he said our marriage depended on solving our financial problems." The mediator was taking careful notes while Marcus recorded everything on his phone. Brian's admission of family conversations about my supposed selfishness, combined with Allison's detailed confession of premeditation, had just handed us an airtight criminal case. "Mrs. Taylor," Marcus said gently to Allison, "are you willing to testify to these facts in court if necessary?" She nodded miserably. "I just want to make this right. I want to give Raisa her money back and try to earn her forgiveness somehow." Brian stood up abruptly, his face flushed with rage. "You stupid woman, you just confessed to a felony. Do you understand what you've done?" "What I've done?" Allison shot back, anger finally replacing her tears. "What you've done, you mean. You manipulated me into this. You convinced me it was justified. You spent the money on yourself and your toys while I felt guilty every single day." The confrontation I had dreaded for weeks was finally happening, but not the way I had expected. Instead of facing a united front of denial, I was watching their partnership collapse under the weight of consequences and blame.
Marcus closed his briefcase and stood up. "Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, you have 48 hours to decide how you want to proceed. Full restitution plus damages, or criminal prosecution. The evidence is overwhelming, either way." As we prepared to leave, Allison grabbed my arm. "Raisa, please. I know I don't deserve it, but please don't let them send me to prison. I'll do anything to make this right." Looking at my sister, broken and desperate, I felt a mixture of sympathy and still resolve. The little girl who used to share secrets with me was still there somewhere. But she had made adult choices with serious consequences. "That's not up to me anymore, Allison," I said quietly. "That's up to the courts now."
The 48-hour deadline came and went without any communication from Brian or Allison. Marcus filed the criminal charges on Wednesday morning, and by Thursday afternoon, both of them had been arrested. The local news picked up the story as an unusual case of family financial fraud, though they kept our names confidential. Brian's case moved through the legal system over the next 4 months. Faced with Allison's testimony, the overwhelming digital evidence, and security footage, his attorney advised him to accept a plea deal rather than risk a jury trial. The final agreement included full restitution of $92,000 plus $25,000 in damages and legal fees. He received 18 months in county jail, 3 years of probation, and 400 hours of community service. The judge was particularly harsh in her sentencing, noting that family financial fraud represented a especially serious breach of trust that deserved significant consequences. The money was returned to me through a court-supervised payment plan. Brian's Escalade was repossessed and sold, along with most of their expensive recent purchases. Their house went into foreclosure when they could no longer make mortgage payments without the stolen funds to prop up their lifestyle. Allison's situation was more complex. Because she had cooperated with the investigation and testified against Brian, the prosecutor offered her a much lighter sentence. She received 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and was required to attend financial counseling sessions. More importantly, she filed for divorce from Brian while he was still in jail. The marriage that had been built on manipulation and financial irresponsibility could not survive the harsh light of legal consequences. She moved back in with our parents, starting over at 31 years old, with nothing but hard-earned wisdom about the cost of poor choices. Our family relationships underwent major changes during this period. My parents initially struggled with the reality that their enabling behavior had contributed to the situation. They attended family counseling sessions with me, slowly learning to recognize the difference between helping and enabling destructive behavior. My father apologized repeatedly for not believing me initially and for suggesting I should just forget about the theft for the sake of family peace. My mother had to confront her own role in always rescuing Allison from consequences, inadvertently teaching her that someone would always clean up her messes. With the full restitution amount returned to my account, plus the damage award, I had enough money to resume my house hunting. The Victorian townhouse I had originally wanted was long gone, but Jennifer helped me find an even better property. A charming craftsman-style home with 3 bedrooms, original hardwood floors, and a larger garden than I had originally dreamed of. The closing process felt different this time. The money in my account carried the weight of a battle fought and won, rather than just years of careful saving. I had learned that protecting your dreams sometimes requires protecting them from the people closest to you. 6 months after buying my home, I hosted a small housewarming party. Maya and her husband came, along with colleagues who had supported me through hard times. My parents brought a plant from my garden, and even Allison attended, though our relationship remained cautious. The house was everything I had hoped for: sunlit rooms, a welcoming kitchen, and a flourishing garden. As I looked around, I realized the theft had taught me the difference between family loyalty and genuine care. The people closest to me now were those who stood by me without expecting anything in return. Allison and I were slowly rebuilding trust. Over monthly coffees, she admitted Brian's theft had forced her to grow up. For the first time, nobody rescued me, she said, and you proved you're stronger than I ever imagined. The old you would have just kept the peace. Her words resonated. I had learned to set boundaries and put my well-being first. That strength carried into my career. I negotiated a raise, earned a promotion, and gained a confidence that extended beyond finances. My true security came from knowing my own worth. I also redefined family loyalty, not as shielding loved ones from consequences, but as holding them accountable. At the party's end, Maya asked, "Are you happy?" I looked around and answered, yes, especially because of what happened with my family. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Months later, Brian wrote from prison, mixing apology with excuses and asking me to support Allison. I threw the letter away. Some people never learn, but that was no longer my problem. Now I write from my garden at sunrise, grateful for the life I built. If you've ever had to stand up to family who tried to take advantage of you, I invite you to share your story. Protecting boundaries isn't selfish. It's the key to living authentically and teaching others to value you too. Thank you for listening, and remember, stay strong and never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve respect.